You ever find yourself circling the block again and again, just hunting for a parking spot? Yeah, we've all been there. But what if I told you the problem isn't that we don't have enough parking, but that we have way too much? In this explainer, we're going to peel back the asphalt and uncover the surprising and often totally invisible costs of something we all just take for granted, the humble parking spot. Okay, so let's just dive right in with the big one, the central question that shapes our entire world, whether we realize it or not. Why on earth do we build our cities for cars and not for people? The answer, it turns out, is hidden in plain sight, in all those vast empty spaces that define so much of where we live. And this just illustrates it perfectly, doesn't it? The two paths a city can take. On the left, you've got Manukau in Auckland. It's basically a sea of parking lots with a few buildings scattered in between. It's designed to store cars. But on the right, that's a street in Tokyo. It's dense, it's vibrant, it's alive with people. What's the key difference? Well, the one on the right has almost no parking. So how did we end up with so many cities that look like the one on the left? Well, it wasn't an accident. Not at all. It's actually the result of some hidden rules that have forced us, for decades, to build a world around the car. And that brings us to the myth of free parking. The main culprit here is a rule called parking minimums. It's this little requirement baked into city zoning codes that says for any new building, I don't care if it's a coffee shop, an apartment, an office, you have to build a certain number of parking spaces. And not based on, actual demand, but on some rigid, often totally arbitrary formula. Now, this slide is fascinating because it shows you the devastating effect of this one simple rule. Look at the top left. With no parking required, you get this dense, walkable neighborhood. But as the rules get stricter, one space here, another space there, the buildings get smaller and pushed farther apart until they're just these lonely islands floating in a huge, useless sea of asphalt. And this isn't just about how things look. It's a massive economic problem. By forcing property owners to build all this parking they might not even need, you're making them dedicate valuable land to something that doesn't generate any income. It's literally a mandatory loss built right into the system. And the cost of that loss is just staggering. Building a single parking space in a garage can cost as much as $37,000. And that cost, it doesn't just disappear. It gets baked into the price of everything else. Your rent, your groceries, your cup of coffee. We all end up paying for so-called free parking, whether we drive or not.
But here's the thing. Does all this parking even make good business sense? Well, let's look at the Trader Joe's paradox. They're famous for their tiny, chaotic parking lots, right? And yet they sell nearly twice as much per square foot as a competitor like Whole Foods with its giant lots. So what gives? Well, they prioritize using their space efficiently for customers, not for empty cars, which lets them open in dense, walkable areas where people are already nearby.
To really see how these rules play out in the real world, let's zoom in on our case study, Manukau, a major center in Auckland, New Zealand. We're going to see how an entire landscape was completely transformed, not by chance, but by design.
Just look at this progression over time. In 1959, Monaco is mostly just open farmland, a clean slate. By 1981, as the city center starts to take shape, you can already see the pattern emerging, buildings surrounded by parking. Now, fast forward to 2010, and the transformation is complete. The number one feature of the landscape is just the sheer amount of parking. And this is the end result, an aerial shot of Manukau today. It's not really a connected city center, is it? It's more a collection of destinations that you have to drive between. Every building is like an island, totally isolated from the next one by this huge moat of parking. This is the direct physical consequence of decades of putting cars first. But, the story doesn't have to end there. Cities all over the world are finally starting to realize the immense cost of this approach. So let's look at how places like Auckland are now trying to reclaim their streets and put people back at the center of the picture. The good news is that policies aren't permanent. Auckland, for example, is right in the middle of a huge shift, rolling out a new citywide parking strategy. And the goal is pretty simple. Manage parking in a way that actually encourages better and more sustainable ways to get around, like public transit, walking, and biking. So instead of a single, blunt rule for everyone, they've created this much smarter, tiered system. Think of it like this. Tier 1, in the less dense areas, is a pretty light touch. Tier 2, in town centers that have good transit, starts to nudge people away from all-day commuter parking. In Tier 3, right in the city center, actively manages parking to make the alternatives the best and easiest option. And this strategy isn't just about the downtown core, it applies across the whole region. It's about being smart, managing parking at major transit hubs like this one, and making it way easier for people to just connect with buses and trains instead of having to drive all the way into the city. It's about supporting growth where it makes the most sense. So what becomes possible when we start to rethink parking? Well, suddenly all of this valuable public space is unlocked. A few parking spots can be completely transformed into outdoor dining patios, creating these amazing social spaces and giving a real boost to local businesses. Or that same boring strip of asphalt can become a little pocket park. You add some trees, some grass, and it doesn't just make our neighborhoods more beautiful and pleasant to be in, it actually helps with stuff like managing stormwater and cooling the city down. And this is so crucial. This space can be repurposed to make other forms of transport way better. It can become dedicated bus lanes so the bus is never stuck in traffic, protected bike lanes so you feel safe, or bigger hubs for public transit. It creates this amazing cycle where better alternatives reduce the need for parking even more. Okay, so we've seen the problem and we've looked at some of the solutions. But let's bring it back to the big picture. Why does getting this parking stuff right matter so much for all of us? Here's a number that really puts it all into perspective. In Auckland, 43% of all carbon emissions come from transportation, and that's mostly private cars. If we're serious about tackling climate change, we absolutely have to address our reliance on driving. And believe it or not, fixing our parking policy is one of the most powerful tools we have. And the payoff for getting this right is huge. I mean, we're talking about safer streets for walking and biking, more attractive and vibrant neighborhoods. We get better, more reliable ways to get around, a healthier environment, and, this is a big one, we free up enormous amounts of land for things we desperately need, like more housing. And this vision of a bustling, connected city, this isn't some fantasy. It's what becomes possible when we just shift our focus. By designing our cities and our transport systems for people first, we can create places that are not only more efficient and sustainable, but honestly, just more enjoyable and more human. So I'll leave you with this thought. The next time you walk past a big, half-empty parking lot, don't just see a place to store cars. See the potential. See the homes, the parks, the small businesses, the vibrant public squares they could be. And ask yourself, what could the parking lots in your neighborhood become?